When my tears turn to laughter, that child long ago, my soul starts to linger. It's home, I know. If you catch me daydreaming now and forever, thoughts are carrying me along to that place we call home. Down that long road, throughout life we roam.
The Surus River, a remnant of the Ice Age. It has as many stories as there are twists and turns along its route through southern Manitoba. Near the end of the Victorian era, in the late 1800s, countless migrants moved to this promised land, the vast, unsettled spaces of present-day Western Canada. Today, as archaeologists sift through the layers of history here, a fascinating picture emerges. Societies have inhabited this same terrain for thousands of years. In this program, the story of Surus, Manitoba. We'll look at the region, and we'll embark on an adventure of geology, archaeology, and sociology that will not soon be forgotten. It's a Saturday on the Souris Plains. From Brandon, Manitoba, headed for Estevan, Saskatchewan, 111 cars scheduled for a haul of coal. Coal, the changing Earth's crust, the movement of glaciers, has left a curiosity of stone around here, as Larry O'Neill will tell you.
See, this piece of wood is...
The majority of them came from the Rocky Mountains, from the erosion of the Rockies, and that stone was picked up and brought over this way. Stone came from the Arctic Ocean, stone came from Labrador, and then a certain amount of the stone came back from the southwest, from Montana direction.
What do you got there?
Petrified wood.
Petrified wood, yeah. Right.
Kids all like stones. Kids like the color of stones, kids like the feel of stones. I don't know what it is. Stones talk to them or something. There's one fellow that comes down from up north, and he claims you have to go out there early in the morning and sneak over the piles, you know, so that they won't hide on you. But that's his story.
Claire Edmonds is both a railway man and a Souris area farmer. He lives the duality of experience, which encapsulates the century of history of what was formerly Plum Creek. A center of milling and shipping since the beginning, this place along the banks of the Surus River was a dream for an entourage called the Millbrook Colonization Syndicate. Led by Squire W.H. Soden, they quit Ontario for greener pastures, betting that they lay in Big Sky country. Alice Brown.
There was a higher percentage of well-educated people in this entire group from the beginning on, a higher percentage than there were in many other pioneer communities. They had big ideas. They wanted to show that the West could be great, and in a short time.
A dozen?
Saturday is also market day. and most often you have to get there early. The produce moves fast. Among the buyers and sellers are members of the Hutterite population, a group that makes up part of the community at large. Paul Wallman.
We were of German origin, and most people, they didn't understand, like even today. At that time, they never understand the Hutterites because there was so little known about them. During the war, they started to come and go to Canada. And then they situated themselves around Eli. Milltown Colony was the main place where everybody was situated. From there on, like, it spread out to 5 different colonies, you know.
The shrunken course of a glacial meltwater channel, the Surus Valley contains a motherlode of archaeological evidence from centuries of occupation. Brian Scribe.
One of the things that we found last year was this agate basin point base, which is anywhere from 6,000 to 8,000 years old, and it drew a lot of attention to this site. The point is missing. It's probably about the length of maybe a 303 shell.
The detective work of archaeology is what inspires Dr. Bev Nicholson.
We had hoped that we actually had a Paleo-Indian site here. The radiocarbon dates indicate that it was probably curated in, that is, picked up by somebody probably about 1,500 years ago, brought into the site, used as a tool, broken, and then discarded. Nevertheless, they probably picked that up somewhere not too far from here, so the sites are here, if we could find them.
A land of agate, jasper, flint, a remnant of ancient Lake Souris, the Souris Plains.
Throughout the 1800s, there were fur trade posts down on the Surus River, farther upstream. But as far as the area of Souris, it was really empty. There was no trading post, there was nothing. After all, they did not start to survey Manitoba until the early 70s. And it was not until 79 and 80 that they got this far west at all. In the late summer of 1880, W.H. Soden toured all through this area. He felt this area was best. It was far enough south of the CPR that they didn't have a claim on homestead land here.
The Soden Plum Creek Party, as it was known, was the first of the land-hungry tide to settle here. But their numbers soon swelled with an inflow from the old country. Establishing services for the arrivals headed the community in the right direction.
In an amazingly short length of time, they had a pretty good mill built and a dam necessary to make the pool for that, and they were a going concern. In 84 and 85, they operated 24 hours a day. One fellow in 85, he had been there in 82 when the mill was just getting started, and there were a mere handful of buildings of any kind. And in March of 85, he came back. He wrote to his family in Ontario, telling them of the extraordinary growth of Souris in that length of time. All these stores, all these things, 50 buildings, etc. He said, for a place so far from the railroad and so on, to have made this growth and be this well established in a matter of 3 years, he thought it was extraordinary.
You can tell a tourist from a rock hounder when they first stop the car there and they get out of the car. The tourist goes and looks up and down the street and at the building and everything, but the rock hounder looks at the ground and he'll pick up a stone.
You know, I could choose my own stone.
Oh, sure. We'll find some stones for you. They come from all over. Australians are great rock hounders. Like, we'll always have a few people from Australia every year and looking for stone. I've had Americans that come in that have never been in a place like this before, and they can't believe there's such a variety. These are people that know their stone. Each collector has his own idea of what he he collects. There's collectors come out here and they're looking for a stone that looks like something. They don't care what kind of a stone it is. If it looks like a dog's head or, you know, or something like this is what they collect. The colors in there are impurities. It could be iron or something washed in at the same time. And then there'll be the rock hounds. Most of them are looking for semi-precious stones or things that they can make jewelry out of. A lot of these rock hound people are kind of nice people. Most of them would just as soon be out there by themselves, thinking that they'll find something that the other guy isn't going to find. And they carry on with their dreams. It's something like fishing.
Dress, custom, language, communal life remain virtually unchanged for the Hutterites, who originated in Czechoslovakia in the 1500s.
The first thing you'll notice is organization. There is no precedent. Our minister hasn't got more to say than I have or anybody. He's authorized to do things which are above us. But to say this belongs to me or I've got more than you have, no. Unity, that's the thing. If unity disintegrates, it would be impossible to work as we do. Our mother tongue is Polish, and you would always call that broken German, Low German. Now, I've heard that thing about Low German. I'm not too sure whether we could call it really Low German. All our books are in High German. You know, we conform, but there's a reason for the plain clothing. That was years ago, that black was the cheapest clothing, the most moderate color for a Christian. That's what our elders at that time thought. We tried to shy away from different colors, you know, from pride. Like pride is one of our greatest sins.
The Surus Valley discloses intriguing images of societies and of ways of life.
The area that we're in here was a sort of no man's land when the first Europeans arrived. A variety of people hunted into the area. The Dakota hunted in from the south, the Ojibwa and the Cree from the east and the west, and the Métis also hunted in the area when they came on the scene. From here you can see the entire valley. It would have been possible to have seen game moving off of the plain to the south into the valley and to have been in place to intercept that game and take it for the people living in the camp nearby.
We're opening up windows to the past here and looking at our heritage from way back then, things that even in our oral tradition that are forgotten, and here we can physically see it. You know, hunting techniques, processing food, preparing leather, butchering techniques. These are the kind of things that are revealed to us in archaeological sites. One of the things that it proves is that they lived very harmoniously with the natural environment, and they didn't leave too much garbage behind.
Saturday at Plum Creek. The town of Surus continues its role, servicing the surrounding region, where grain production, dairying, and stock breeding are the mainstays. A dozen years before the town's incorporation in 1904, CP was convinced to expand here, south of the main line, through generous private and public concessions.
There were two lines going through town. There was the Brandon Esteban and the Surus Arcola line. shortly after the turn of the century, that CPR decided that it was the proper distance and so on for a divisional point. That made a big influx of population, because after all, things were much more labor-intensive in those days. And they were very proud of having the railway at CPR. This was a matter of pride to the whole town. But they really didn't think of themselves particularly as a railway town, as an industrial place.
The squire and his Millbrook family would see to it that, although industry was a necessity, life on the banks of the Souris would have its finery.
Between 91 and 94, Squire Soden built a large block of building on the south side of the straight bit of the crescent where the curve ends. And this had a theater place for meetings, and these were used. Professor Racine gave music lessons, had a good orchestra, and they put on theatrical performances. They were also interested in sport. These early people had the Beaver Club, that was a swimming club. They had swimming contests and so on in the mill pond. And down on the flat below where the swinging bridge is now, there was a small tennis court.
Working with stone is the same as working with wood. You're just changing it. You're just trying to, somebody says, mess up or improve on Mother Nature. Agate is all over the world, and so is jasper. But this one region has a great amount of it. This is the thing.
Better put it in something.
Certain ones have certain characteristics. We have a lot of plume agate, and it has a kind of a feathered design in it. And then there's different fortification agates. There's actually no limit. A lady from Douglas, she calls killer agates. I don't know if you ever heard of a killer agate. Well, a killer agate is just so pretty that she'd kill for it, and and you shouldn't really show it to anybody. You gotta just keep it as a secret.
Hutterites were originally industrialists. Watchmakers, lockmakers and stuff like that, you name it, shoemakers and everything, that leather, tanning. So the Mennonites showed them, actually, the Hutterites how to fire. One thing you'll notice in the colony mostly, in a shop, you know, you'll see the men working, you always find he's not a trained engineer or something else, he's a born engineer. So none of our people ever went to college or to a school to learn all those trades and so on. We work 6 days a week. Sunday, there's absolutely no work being done. Nobody is sitting around if you can, you know, even the smallest children around.
A town and its river. Marrying the two is one of the longest, at 177 meters, suspension footbridges in the country.
The reason that they built the swinging bridge was to make a connection to Idlewild, to make it more attractive as a place for homes, because it was actually a rather attractive site. In its early days, it wasn't sufficiently supported with guy wires, and a big wind came and turned it over once. People loved it as a shortcut and a nice peaceful way to get from one side of the river to the other.
Landmarks and distant voices.
Oh, you got some bone. That's neat. Got another occupation there. Got an axis vertebra here from a bison. You've got a second and third carpal, some fire-cracked rock here. The time period of this occupation ranges from about 1150 to 1600 years ago. The material within that time frame seems to belong to the Sonota complex. These people were bison hunters, and the material that we're finding here is typical campsite material. Butchered animal bone, fire-cracked rock, the sort of thing you find associated with stone boiling, pottery, which would be used for cooking, scrapers, which would be used for dressing hides, that sort of thing. Brian and the crew working here are First Nations people. They're exploring their heritage. Brian talks with elders and shares information with them and receives a lot of information in return. The oral traditions of the First Nations contain all kinds of valuable information that I think, quote-unquote, scientists have tended to dismiss.
There's some times when you could sit out here and actually hear voices and children playing, and the feeling we get from this place is it was a very happy place. People were happy here. People were probably well fed, and you know, there's a lot of very good feelings associated with this site.
There's one body with a bunch of members, you know. So that's our cohesion we keep together. There's only one thing that can keep members together is love. This word explains everything.
It's quiet here and it's nice, and you don't have to worry. You can walk down the streets at night and do whatever you want. Nobody's going to bother you. People say you live in a small town and everybody knows your business. Well, so what? You know theirs.
I think in general that it has retained the same sort of spirit of eagerness to go ahead and to do the best they can. Now, the way in which this is done has changed over the years, but the basic core of the feeling is still there.
Etched into the Manitoba landscape, the Surus has penetrated the lives of generations, leaving in its wake, as it twists and turns through a town of the same name, the stuff for new generations to dream on.
It'll always be home, home to me. To that place we call home. Down that long road, throughout life we roam. Whenever I go, whenever I